in an event sponsored by, I can't believe it, my childhood library, where I discovered Nancy Drew and the Wizard of Oz, and I can still picture exactly where those books are on the shelf. I want to thank Mary Johnson in the upper left and other members of the library staff who made this possible, Indie Author Day. And a shout out to the previous authors who shared their works with us earlier today, and thank all of you for coming. So my parents, my two sisters and I moved from the Big Apple to Armonk in a half-finished house in Windmill Farms right before Christmas, 1955. And I was immediately plunked into Miss Cully's first grade classroom at Wampus Elementary School. And we hadn't learned to read yet at PS 40 on the Lower East Side. So my first day at school, I dutifully copied what Miss Cully had on the blackboard. And when she had name, I just wrote N-A-M-E. All she could say was, "Oh, my dear." And all I could think was, it's going to be hard living in the suburbs. So my family became part of Armonk life right away. My father became a volunteer firefighter, although I really don't remember him fighting any fires. But I do remember my mother volunteering at the library. And when we three girls left to school, she scooted to library school herself and was the reference librarian at the next town over in Pleasantville, New York. So libraries are in our blood. I would like to read some poems. We're going to show some photographs, have a few comments, and then have any questions and answers at the end, if that's okay with you, Mary.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yeah. We can't really do the book sales online the way we did in the library. But if you have links for people to buy the book, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
And I will, of course, be contacting you about getting a copy for the library.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'm going to start with reading a copy of my first book, Coalescence. Because this poem is very apropos for both Armonk and my second hometown, Amherst, Massachusetts. This is called New England Synthetic. Exposed stone walls crumble the past labors of colonists to clear the land and stake their claim against Indian and each other. Rusting barbed wire skirts the leg of ancient maples. Red buds the bruised fingers of stubborn farmers, the chafed hands of their exhausted wives. Not enough, a new white fence, bright as a Kentucky morning, costumes the land. Now stables for horses of giggling girls in smooth velvet-trimmed hats. The slats slick woof an affront to the rough warp of trees maturing outside the boundary. Footprints from their plastic riding boots press into spring mud. Impressions disappear as quickly as soft moccasin, worn sole. So World War II had a great effect on me, as it did many, many people, as I was named after two Italians who hid my pilot father behind enemy lines in northern Italy. And my childhood was filled with crinkly airmail letters arriving with strange and beautiful stamps. So my second book, Plunge, which seems incredibly wiped out on Zoom, but it is a beautiful cover, begins with the story of my father's plane crash and continues with my relationships to his rescuers and their descendants over the last 40 years as I've gradually become a member of Village Life. And this book, of course, seems very apropos as we are approaching Veterans Day on November 11th. The book has 4 sections, and each starts with either a photo or a photo collage. And I thank my sister Daryl, who did the cover, and also the photo collages. So Mary, if you could put up the first picture, please.
Can you see this?
Yep.
Yeah, we can see it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so continue.
Okay. Prologue, William H. Johnson. He shed his issued boots behind long lines of infantry and chose the Air Corps in cahoots with God, his country, and machinery. Such bold abandon, speed and height, the twists and turns, the upside downs, and never could he quell his fright. Trail of tracers, sudden ground. Plunge. Bullets strafe his P-47 as stuttering pistons bleed a firestorm. Downward spiral a physicist would admire, yet my father always hated math. Panic racked, his canopy jammed, his life be damned. How many seconds left to pull the cord? But he's lucky that day, free of the jug, a hell of a story, floats and sinking, silken fall over Lago di Garda's marbled edge. Impact. Mountain rock against tibia, femur. Paratigiani emerge through dark forest, bundle his chute, camouflage debris. Only my father remains to be hidden. The Germans, Tedeschi, are everywhere. So can you put on the second picture, Mary? So, parents' first dance, Little Rock, 1942. It's your duty to the boys, my grandmother insists. Her daughter must attend the weekend USO officers' dance. Even though Dorothy is engaged, her ring expected soon by post. She foxtrots with an airman from Chicago, Scandinavian tall, sapphire eyes, brown curly hair, easy smile. What he lacks in Delta manners, balanced by unpredictable charm. A hint of adventure in his laugh, a sense of crossing boundaries, leaving Dixie behind. Imagine, falling for a damn Yankee. She thinks she is learning what love is, something mysterious. Taking a chance on love, that old black magic, not wanting to wait until the lights go on again all over the world. My mother returns the ring. Would you take the pictures off temporarily right now, Mary?
Okay, there
Okay,
we go.
thank you. Okay, back to that February 8th day. All fall down. Altimeter gone haywire, Kraut pilots hell bent, my body a strange axe fashioned of skin and bone takes out the top of a tree. I'm surrounded. They strip off my flight jacket, goggles, uniform, leave me my dog tags. A young man named Zanola gives me worn pants, an itchy sweater, wool cap. I'm carried down the mountain. In a small barn, a fire, some soup, possibility of sleep. God, I'd like to smoke a Camel right about now, have a shit shower and shave. But this is enough. A second wind, a second chance. So my father only spent one night with the partisans. They said it was too dangerous for him to stay and suggested that he walk north where there were fewer Germans. He walked for a couple of days and was very fortunate to find a farmer who had been in Australia after World War I and knew some English. His name was Silvio, and he and his cousin Teresa agreed to hide my father. Sanctuary. When my father senses the Germans searching, he prepares his disguise. Mud to darken his light complexion, a load of firewood to hide his height stooping. He abandons Teresa's stall, slogs in the snow up the mountain path to San Bernardo's chapel, enters the small refugio behind the altar, once used by overnight hikers before the war. He builds a fire, pierces potatoes on sticks, roasts them over coals. He prays the nighttime smoke over the tiny chimney goes unnoticed. Snitches everywhere, ready to spill the beans for 2 kilos of salt. He turns and turns the potatoes, wishes for a smoke, and thinks of my mother, his Babs, back in Baton Rouge. She must be worried sick. Missing in action. And who received the telegram? Babs? His parents? He always said his folks were aloof, ice cold as the snows outside, shipping him off to Morgan Park Military Academy, a high school situated on a bluff and run on the same principle, he would snicker. He hated discipline, stuffy lectures, pointless drills. Leader of the marching band, he set the pace too fast for the tubas in the back row. They'd run hard with their big brass mamas trying to catch up. And then there's the Saturday morning he broke into the academy, moved everyone's books to different desks in other classrooms. His punishment, hours on the drill field alone. And he made a joke of that too, marching backwards, a trickster twirling his rifle like a co-ed's baton. A large audience gathered while the administration fumed. They couldn't kick him out, my grandfather prominent on the board. So my father rotates the potatoes one last time, lets them cool briefly, warming his hands. Jesus, he's so very hungry. The winds howl, the Germans hunt. There's nothing like a baked potato. So Mary, if you could go back, we're going to see 3 photos right now in a row.
Mm-hmm. And we'll go
Fun. We never do this in academic poetry reading, showing photos at the same time. So I just want to introduce you to the 3 major rescuers. This is Santo Zanola. He's in his Alpini hat, which is even today a mountain club that men and sometimes women join. They wear these great green hats, and this was taken right after the war. My father didn't remember his name, but after I went the first time and there were some newspaper articles, his family hunted down the others in Italy, and I've become friends with all of them. His wife is still living. She's 95, and they have managed to keep her alive during the coronavirus in the red zone in Lombardy. So next picture.
Sorry, this is so clumsy.
No
I
problem.
could have set it up as a slideshow, but I wasn't sure of the timing.
Okay.
Come on, open.
This is Teresa with one of Silvio's children, also taken about right after the war. And the next picture, please. And here is Silvio. Survived the cruel cane fields of Australia. Many men in this village area went to Australia after World War I to make money. When they came home, they could finally get married and start their lives again in Italy. And it's interesting, after World War II, people in the same village who had no work, the men went to Brazil. So when I started going to Italy, people would ask me if I was from Brazil. If I said I was from America, they'd assume it was South America. Okay. So my father did survive the war. And in fact, it just so happened he ended up on a page in Tom Brokaw's book. The end of the war was very, as we all know, was just chaos. And my father ended up being in a couple of prisons and a couple of prisoner of war camps. And Tom Brokaw highlighted another pilot who was in Moosburg. You can't see this, but that's okay. Moosburg Stalag 7A. And on Liberation Day, this picture was taken, and my mother couldn't believe it, but my father and his best friend were right in the middle of this picture.
Is that in The Greatest Generation?
Yes, yes.
Huh.
So I decided, my parents sent a lot of money, well, as much as they could, in food after the war, but they hadn't gone back. So when I was in my late 20s, I just said, oh, I'm going to meet these people before it's too late. And so I plunked myself into the village of Bione. So if you could put up the next picture, please, the colored picture. Okay, I'm sorry this picture isn't any clearer, but here is the village. And I call this poem Resonance. Village of Bione, 1977. Magma pushes skyward, fissures cooling rock face. Tempests rage rain as stucco walls crumble, marble headstones crack. Baroque bells intone each quarter hour. Roosters interrupt dawn's TV news. Ashen-faced men now tool brass and stainless steel, mold plastics, hammering of armor long since abandoned. Across the greening valley, fungi, chicory, wild asparagus nudge through thawing soil. Cacophony of sparrows, call of rare nightingale. Hunting dogs bark on guard for invasions. Scent of Germans in each gene. Legacy of 1,000 souls, their dialect conquered by umlauts centuries ago. Vespas, autos, trucks muffle women's gossip. Echoes bounce across mountain roads. Archaeology of sound. Now, some of you may know that in Italy, the official Italian, we can leave this picture up right now, Mary. The Italian language is the one used in school, but every village has its own dialect. So as I started going to the village, not only was I struggling to learn Italian, I was struggling to try to understand the dialect, which in this village is French, German, and Italian, with every word cut in half, and very guttural and very lots of umlauts, like hic, hac, de, hoc, hello. So you could be saying la dolce vita, la vita bellissima, and then hear hic, hac, de, heck, hoc. So it was really an amazing challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So this village is located halfway between Milan and Venice, near Lake Garda. And the area has experienced many disasters and wars and plagues. The most significant plague before now was in 1630. And even today, there are churches and roadside memorials. And I've even seen a couple of altars in cornfields dedicated to Santo Rocco, Saint Rocco, the saint of plagues. And so this poem is set in 1630. Supplication. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Santo Rocco, some neighbors have already locked themselves in their homes, scream through shuttered windows, armpits and groins engorged. Tumors the size of eggs, of pears. In days there will be silence. Other villagers are feasting, drinking their winter stores, sexing and abandoned, no woman safe. O Santo Rocco, blessed one, deliver our village. Save, oh please, my child, my husband. Why did the soldiers flee to our tiny Bionetta, bringing pestilence north to our mountains? You know we are Venetian lieges and must provide our scarce food, animals, our beautiful armor. My husband, such a skilled craftsman, a good provider. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, O merciful Santo Rocco, you who have survived this darkness, bless us, raise us to heaven. May we die now before we are ill, before the black buboni scourge our sinful bodies. Forgive us, forgive us. Give us the everlasting life of Christ. Deliver us from hunger, the stench, and the misery that will be this winter. Amen. Amen. This village center, all of these buildings were built right before the plague in between 1600 and 1620. And even today, although they've been gutted and renovated inside, they've maintained the 1620 carved over their arched doorways. So you can imagine how horrifying it would be to have a plague with such a compact housing situation. So Mary, I'm going to read the rest of the poems without the pictures and then show the last picture at the end, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. So many wonderful friends, second family. And I'm going to read a poem in honor of my best friend, La Marina. In her renovated beauty parlor, she stands in her black underwear, drying her dyed red hair. Sono brute, she moans in dialect. I don't agree with her, of course. I think she's beautiful, a Carmen. Intently she works, sculpting her locks just right. Mousse, brush, spray, gel, comb. No one would guess she is an artist, her home hung in oils. Villas, mountains, flowers, the grandfather, a church, but most of all, boats sailing. I no longer have time to paint, she insists. I must work for my children. I keep silent. We both know they are grown. Her parlor is castle, prison. Marina begins to dress, trying to find an outfit just right. Every drawer, closet is opened. It takes her 20 minutes to choose. Only now is she ready to take me out to dinner. Marina has learned to drive and hugs the narrow roads like a vixen hunting. She has also learned to use a rifle and jokes she would like to shoot her husband as well as the sparrows. But she will not shoot him, of course, her Federico. She will watch him grow old, stooped without teeth. She will look in her sharp shop mirror and see an old woman, one who dreams of a lake far away, one who has made the village beautiful. Well, you can't write about Italy without writing about food. And there are several food poems in this collection, and here is one. La Familia, the family. La farina, le uova, flour and eggs. Olio, burro, sale, pepe, rosmarino, basilico, ragu. Kitchen staples. Love with a pinch of pepper, resentment with spoonfuls of salt. The yeast of tedium rises, resignation stored by the kilo. It's sometimes dessert, a tiramisu, sweetens disappointment, invites pleasure. So the first summer I visited, the first of, I don't know, I've lost count, 15 summers, parts of 15 summers. Silvio's son asked me to marry him. So I went back the next summer on approval, so to speak, and I declined the offer. If I had married you, I'd have learned to make ravioli from scratch. Mix egg yolks and semolina, knead the dough lightly, then roll, 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 mix the stuffing, cut the squares, fill, fold, stack properly for use that same day. I'd have learned to wring a chicken's neck, guts its innards, pluck each feather, skin smooth for the spit. I would have learned to keep a house dust-free, to iron even the sheets, dish towels, and underwear. I'd have learned the Italian name for each part of a door handle, a window lock. Sat at a desk translating letters about bronze hardware. Regina with a cheap crown of a minor principality, the factory office. I'd have learned to wait all Sunday while you rode your white Arabian stallion over steep trails. The laugh of the town, you spending more time with your horse than me, your foreign wife. I would have, however, have borne handsome children of sturdy stock. But no, not enough, this education. Desire's hot furnace, stoked by youth's kindling, would have choked my future. Sottomettere, to be subjugated, to be put under. And even today, women are still ironing underwear in this village in northern Italy. And my friend Marina actually pays someone from her wages of her beauty parlor to do the ironing because she can't stand it anymore either. So, underwear, okay. The last section of the book looks at my family after the war and mostly our time in Armonk. So I do have 2 Armonk poems. Suburban twist. Up at 5, shave, shower, suit, frosted flakes, fedora, dress coat, briefcase. Out before 6, car for 20, train for 45, read the Tribune, subway 20, sidewalk 10, Wall Street. Horizontal travel only, no longer a pilot's thrill of ascent unless one considers the elevator. Hire men, firemen, write contracts, keep contracts, lucky if time for lunch. Horn and Hard Arts automat, a bench at Sloppy Louie's, Tad's Steakhouse, $1.09. A frustrated architect, he volunteers to design office renovations in addition to managing personnel. He'd do anything to avoid actual accounting. Decades earlier, in Al Capone's Chicago, his own father, a founding partner of the very same firm, a reputation my dad could never escape. Yet always a jokester, when the office's first Xerox copier breaks down, he paints it yellow, rolls the lemon down Fifth Avenue to their showroom. Excellent service for years to come. At 4:30, he sidesteps typists, juniors, janitors, sidewalk 10, subway 20, train 45, the post, car 20. That is, if the conductor wakes him at North White Plains. Otherwise, he'll sleep all the way to Brewster. Reverse direction, train again 50, car 20, news 30, Huntley and Brinkley, family dinner 20. A few cigarettes, bourbon and Coke, paperwork, maybe a TV show or two. Jack Parr, The Fugitive, Bonanza, bed by 10. Our Sisyphus in pinstripes. I'm going to read a poem now called A Pantoum for you who are writers out there. It has a complicated, repetitive pattern, which you'll hear. But every time a line is repeated, I alter it slightly. So for pantoums, it's just best to close your eyes and just let the images wash over you. Armonk, 1960s. Three sisters lost old brownstones for the burbs. Our unfinished house set in evergreen forest. And we did not know what to expect after city housing, fenced playgrounds. Our unfinished house bordered untamed land, which we claimed for us cowgirls and Indians. After concrete playgrounds, monkey bars, we clambered up fragrant, sap-filled boughs. Cowgirls and Indians, Tarzan and Jane, we swung over glacial rocks on wild grapevines, then abandoned the blue spruce branches for brownies, church choir, ballet. Our mother swung our Ford wagon around town after school, homework completed after dinner and the news. Piano lessons, drama, band seized prominence. On weekends, we helped Dad work on the house. Car 54, bewitched, our homework rewards as Dad smoked his aromatic camels. On weekends, we help him maintain the yard. He loved his peaceful forest after the commute. Inhaling his camels, adulthood beckoned. We girls switched from anklets to nylons. Dad's commute continues as Armonk grew with 3 banks, 4 churches, and 17 bars. We switched from anklets to nylons, matching skirt outfits to culottes and slacks. With 3 banks, 4 churches, and 17 bars, we had money, salvation, and whiskey. From button-down blouses to turtlenecks jeans, we 3 sisters left the burbs for the future, beyond banks to bell-bottoms, Vietnam, off to college, and we did not know what to expect. I can't tell you what that phrase had on us middle schoolers. 3 banks, 4 churches, and 17 bars. Oh, life will always be merry. With 3 banks, 4 churches, and 17 bars, we'll have money, salvation, and whiskey. That was actually, and I found out thanks to Mary Johnson and her contact with Sharon Tomback at the Historical Society, that came from an absolutely, at the time, scandalous production by the North Castle Players called Venus or Bust. And Margaret, I know you're in the audience. I don't know, Margaret, if you saw that play at Harold C. Crittenden School, but it was unbelievable. And you look at it now, and boy, was it sexist. And so, since I just attempted to sing at a poetry reading, I'll sing the part of the next song. What has she got, and where did she get it? Look at her there. It's all so unfair. For such and such is much too much, and where did she get it? Anyway, as a middle schooler, this was just great. And it's hard to believe I used to be a soprano. I feel like I'm, below the tenor range at this rate. Armonk has changed so much. I think Hickory and Tweed is the only store left from that era. And when I was little, we had Jimmy D's Pharmacy on the corner, complete with, believe it or not, a soda fountain and the best burgers in town. We had a 5 and dime where we could spend our allowance. There was even a very dark, creepy comic and candy store where we could spend our money. And as a treat, my father would occasionally buy a steak at Brichetti's Butchers. And I think that every single car in Armonk depended upon McQuaid's Corner Shell Station. And I remember my sister Daryl during the 1973 gas shortage she was home from school and would actually wake up early in the morning, drive the car down to McQuaid's and wait an hour to get however many gallons of gas you were allowed. And another memory was about St. Stephen's Christmas pageant. The rehearsal's always better than the actual pageant. And Mary, I don't know if you have this book in the library. Dave Barry's book, The Shepherd, the Angel, and Walter, the Christmas Miracle Dog, is based on the St. Stephen's Christmas pageant. He imagines the town as Asquant, of course it's Armonk, and he calls St. Stephen's St. John's, but it really does capture the time period. So I'm going to read 2 more poems. July 4th storm. Heat lightning flashes a silent Morse code as mists of gunpowder festoon the sky with palette and pulsation. Reports from tonight's finale shock sharp my memories. Dad served on the local fireworks brigade, each burst like tracer bullets from his P-47 Thunderbolt. War's a bitch, don't ask, he'd say. And he'd always have a grin on his sweaty face when the job was done. Left with the mute lightning, I imagine him flying, released from the guilt of bombing anything, of killing anyone. I'm going to read a new poem. So Mary, if you can put up the very last picture, which I have permission from my daughter to do.
Okay.
So last June, my daughter Thea and her now husband Justin decided to go ahead with their wedding. 9 people attended, and it was a glorious event. And we didn't have steak like my parents had. Okay, wedding song. Coastal New England June day, high tide and clear, after a fog-thick morning. Long abandoned the ancient Greek preference for a January wedding, full moon rising. Without invoking the goddess Hera or any god at all, a daughter pivots from her parents to her future, vows exchanged. Those in attendance contemplate their lives, tsunami of memory, weddings, births, degrees, jobs, divorce, or perhaps disappointment in never having been chosen, or joyous images of travel past, a plague now hovering. Distant thunder, darkening sky, just enough time for photos before the predicted deluge. The small gathering saves their time together inside. As guests depart, a strawberry moon ascends between dissipating clouds. Thank you very much.